Our speaker tonight is named Matlock. You may not know, he's my grandson. My only grandchild. And I am so proud of him I could just burst. He's back from several deployments in Afghanistan as an Air Force special ops. They go through intense training, and he has been deployed several times. He came out and left the Air Force, but stayed in the National Guard in Portland to go to school. And as he was in the National Guard in Portland, he got called up again. The whole Guard got called up. And that deployment, they were sure when they left that they were not coming back. They were in contact with the people that were fighting, and they were positive that they would not return. So he left with that on his mind. It was a terrific experience, which he will not let me talk about. And I don't want to talk about it either, but you can ask him questions and he might answer them. When he returned from that deployment, he was a different person. No one can know what it's like to be under constant fire for 6 months, under horrible conditions, under horrible living conditions. But the people that send our loved ones, we are under that sort of stress too. And when they come back, they are not the same. They are not the person that left. And so they have a lot to deal with, and I'll let him tell you about that. He's a better speaker about what he went through. But what changed for him was when he got his dog, Willis. That dog that was provided free of charge from the Labs of Liberty people. These two people are here tonight, Joan and Roger Nold. They provided Willis to him free of charge, a trained service dog, and it changed his life. We in the family saw him open his heart once again and become human again. And so it's with that knowledge and with that thankfulness to the Labs for Liberty that I present Matlock, my grandson.
First and foremost, I just want to tip my cap to everybody here. Animal welfare is a very important cause, and everything that you guys do in this room is very noble, and I think it's very significant, so thank you for everything you do with that. As my grandmother introduced, my name is Matthew Matlock. I was actually born here in Mariposa, California, right down the road at John C. Fremont Hospital. And I've got family all over the room tonight. I've got some in the middle table there, in the back, and then the left table. So I have some lineage in this town as well. But I ended up graduating high school in Modesto, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life at that time. I was kind of struggling as a junior college student, and I didn't really understand what I really wanted to do as far as professionally. I dropped out of school, and I was working at beverage distributorship at the time, and this is one of the more significant moments of my life. It's funny because as an 18 or 19-year-old kid, when somebody that's in their 40s or 50s talks to you, usually their message doesn't really resonate. For whatever reason that is, at that age you think you have all the answers. But for whatever reason, that summer in 2003, the guy that I was working with really got through to me. So I was in Modesto, and it was probably about 108, 109, and you guys know how it gets in the Central Valley in the summertime. And we're in the back of Save Mart, and we're humping just hundreds of Snapple cases into the back of this thing. And my co-driver, Brian, is 44 years old, and we're just finishing up this order, and his back hurts, he's wincing in pain, he just looks miserable. And I remember getting in the truck thinking like, hey man, like, are you okay? Like, what's going on? And he just stopped for a second, took a drink of water, and looked at me with like this disgusted look on my face. And he said, Matt, you're too smart for this shit. You need to change what you're doing. You need to do something different. And he just went into this rant. And, you know, he said, I'm 44 years old. I make $19 an hour. I have 4 kids and a wife. We can't afford to go on vacations. You know, I can't ever take time off, and I do physical labor for a living. And he's like, you know, you need to do something different with your life. And I just remember that really stuck with me. I think that his words were important, but I think that visually, seeing him go through whatever that was that he was going through at that time, it really stuck with me. So I went home, and this is right after the Iraq invasion had kicked off, and I was watching CNN, and I think it was Richard Engel that was embedded with the special operations team, and I see these guys with beards, and there's explosions going off, and I knew I was kind of at a pivot in my life. I needed to do something different, and it looked pretty interesting what they were doing on there, and I didn't really understand guys with beards and non-standard uniforms, but it looked interesting. So it had my attention. I talked to some people that I knew, and I'm sorry to say this for any VFW members that are here, but I was told not to do the Army. So that was the one place I wasn't supposed to look. So I went down to the recruiting depot, and it was between Navy, Marines, and the Air Force. And as I'm like walking around there, I kind of like determined, I don't think I want to be on a boat for the rest of my career, so that's out. So it's between the Marine Corps and the Air Force, and I go to actually in the Marine Corps station first. And there's 6 guys standing in line, and there's a guy that looks like he's probably been doing steroids for 20 years sitting behind the desk. And dudes are busting out pull-ups, and it's like a circus in there, and the guy's like yelling at me. And so I was like, okay, I just kind of easily backed out of the door and closed it. I thought, let's go see what the Air Force guy has to say. Needless to say, it was much different. No one was doing any physical activity. The guy was 150 pounds and looked like he was really good at paperwork. So I walked in there. He was super friendly, and he shook my hand and said, you know, what brings you in today? What are you interested in? And I just kind of told him, I said, you know, I'm a student that just dropped out of school. I work at this beverage distributorship. I earn, you know, $7.50 an hour, and I want to do something, you know, that's meaningful and impactful, and something that, you know, not only changes my life and gives me what I need in my life as far as discipline is concerned, but I also want to make a positive impact on my country. And so I kind of told him about what I saw on CNN, and he pointed to this poster. And it's guys jumping out of an airplane, and guys are all camoed up, and you know, there's a guy in the prone, and he's looking at the compass. And I said, yeah, I don't really know what that is, but I think that's kind of like the direction I want to head. And yeah, the ball got rolling after that. We got the paperwork going. Went to Sacramento to MEPS, signed up, did all the physical stuff. Went through that headache for anybody that's been through MEPS. Everybody knows how much fun that is. But 3 months later, I was on a plane and then getting on a bus, and I was at Lackland in San Antonio getting ready for Air Force basic training. And so the job that I signed up for, like what my grandma was saying, is a special operations job in the Air Force, and the title is called Combat Controller, and the position is a Special Ops ground branch in the Air Force that goes around and trains in the United States, but then when they deploy, we train and we fight with other special operations teams. So we go out and we attach to Rangers, we attach to Green Berets, SEAL teams, and Marine reconnaissance, and I've worked with all 4, and they're all fantastic. So I get to Lackland, and you know, basic training is basic training. It's really simple stuff: folding T-shirts, making your bed, being somewhere on time. But it is a change of pace, and the fact that you know, people aren't taking care of you, and people are yelling at you, and you know, for the most part, people are relying on you to do what you need to do. Graduated basic training, and then went right into the training pipeline for Combat Controller. It's about 2 years long, so it's pretty long, pretty exhaustive, and there's a 80% attrition rate. So you see a lot of guys fall out. You start off with about, I want to say 40-something guys, and by the end of the training, I could count on one hand how many guys were still left. I actually have, I wasn't going to say this tonight, but I'm going to do it. I have a source of specific motivation that got me through a lot of it. He's in the back room in a white shirt. His name's Pete. His brother did 20 years in the Air Force, or maybe even longer than that. And when I had signed up, my dad had told Pete what I was going to do, and I think Pete had made a comment like, oh, well, he's not going to do that, he's going to wash out. And I thought, that mother... So, Pete, I want to thank you for that bulletin board material. Because I probably wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for that comment. But for every time, because there's lulls in training where you feel pretty confident about yourself. You got a good run time, or you did a really good job on pull-ups, or you did a good job in the pool. But it's like anything else in your life with peaks and valleys, right? I mean, you're on top 1 minute, and then the next day, they're kicking you in the face and telling you how bad you are. Which really carried through my whole career, as far as the feeling of being high and then low. So there were times where we have a week-long training in North Carolina, they call it Hell Week. You don't sleep, you run around, they're spraying you with hoses, you run around with gas masks and carry big large mannequins that weigh 200 pounds, so really fun stuff. And you go through some moments there where you really question whether or not this is something that you want for yourself. Because when you're in physical agony and you haven't slept, you haven't ate, and you're miserable and you're dirty, you can tell yourself that you're motivated to be there, but it's the real deal at that point. And I just remember looking back, and I kept thinking about the words that Brian told me that day in the back of Save Mart, and I thought, this is it, like there is no turning back for me. I can't do anything else, so I have to keep going. So I pushed through, thankfully, made it through 2.5 years. I broke my ankle on a jump. But some of the training that we do, for those that are familiar, we do jumping out of airplanes, and we did scuba diving, fast roping, rappelling, driving all-terrain vehicles, things like that. So after 2.5 years, I ended up getting stationed in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, the end of 2006. And I was really excited about that because out of all the duty stations that we had in the United States, which were 3 of them, the guys in North Carolina seem to be doing really good work. And I know it's kind of hard to understand or comprehend, but when you're young and you train for something that long, all you want to do is go out and do your job. And that was my primary focus. I wanted to train, and I wanted to go overseas, and I wanted to kill bad people. That was it, plain and simple. That was my only focus. And maybe chasing around girls every now and then. But. So I got there, and I remember my first day in the team room. One of the senior guys came up to me and was like, we're serious here, and if you're not serious, there's the door. And I said, hey man, I'm all in, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. And like I said, I got there at the end of 2006. 2007, I was gone 244 days training all over the United States, shooting, driving courses, calling in airstrikes, which is our primary job, and other things like that, getting ready. So I remember towards the time we're getting ready to launch for that first deployment, they were telling me about where I was going to go, and they were debating on 2 locations. There was one location that was going to be down in southern Afghanistan. It was called Fob Robinson. And they wanted to send me there. There was a lot of action and stuff there. It was my first deployment, so they weren't sure how I was going to do. And so they had me slated initially, and then the guy that was there that I was going to replace had said, don't send a new guy here, there's just too much going on. They took my name off that list, and they put a friend of mine on there by the name of Will Jefferson, and he went instead, and I went to a different part of Afghanistan in Kaus province, and I got stationed out at a little CIA base called Camp Chapman. It was an interesting deployment. I remember flying out that first night. Typically they try and fly around at night to avoid anti-aircraft fire and whatnot. And I remember having all my stuff, and I'm sitting in the back of the bird, and it's wintertime, and Afghanistan actually gets really cold. It's mountainous, it's high desert, and it was probably like -10 in the back of that chopper. And I just remember looking out and thinking about what a beautiful landscape it was, and it actually kind of reminded me of home here in Mariposa, with the snow and the mountains, and it seemed so peaceful, but you kind of know what's on the other side of that. So, but at the same time, I was young, I was motivated, I was really excited. I got to my camp, and it was very interesting in the sense that that we actually had a lot of niceties that I didn't expect to have. Internet, cooked food, a huge room in there. So, I mean, that deployment was pretty cush, actually. And most of the time what we were doing was flying around on helicopters. And the area that we lived in and we worked in, most of the locals there were actually pretty pro-American, and so we got a lot of good intelligence, and most of the time it was not a lot of action in the places that we went that first deployment. I was still having a good time. I was learning. I really enjoyed the teammates I was working with. I was with a 12-man Special Forces team, and I was the only Air Force guy. 2 months into my deployment, I had gotten up and I was eating breakfast, and someone came and grabbed me and they said, "Hey, you have a phone call. It sounds like it's important." So I went into the TOC, the Tactical Operations Center, and I had somebody call me back from the main base in Afghanistan, Bagram, and they had told me that the guy that had taken my place, Will Jefferson, had been killed. Will was on a route back from Kandahar, and they hit a 500-pound IED, and he had died. And it sucked because he had a daughter, and his wife was also pregnant at the time. So as far as, you know, stuff that went on inside my head, I felt, you know, guilty. Like, that should have been me. I don't have kids. I don't have a wife. My name was on that slot. And it was really tough. So it was interesting in the fact that that first deployment, I didn't really interact with the enemy very much in a hostile nature, but I kind of had to deal with learning that my friend died at the location that I was supposed to go to, so that was tough. We came home, and we had learned that we were going to do a quick turnaround, and we got back, and it was like, basically, we're going to go out for 3 months and train, I was going to go right back out for another 6 months. So my time in the Air Force was coming up at that time for active duty. It was coming up on my 6-year mark, but I wanted to go and deploy again. I felt like I had a good deployment, but I didn't get a chance to actually do my job and talk to a lot of aircraft, and I didn't really felt like I made a significant impact like I wanted to. So I went into the first sergeant's office, and I said, you know, I know this deployment's coming up. I know I'm running short on time, but what do I have to do to get on this deployment? So they extended my contract for me for 2 months so that I could come back and I could out-process and keep all my leave. So we did that, we trained hard, and the second deployment, I went to a location down in southern Afghanistan. It was a little bit different, a little bit, not as nice, I guess, as that CA base that I was at. And the mission was different in the sense that we were driving around quite a bit. We had to worry about IEDs a little bit more. And on this one, we actually got into some firefights, so I got to kind of see what that was like. And it's very interesting to explain it. It's like explaining a color you've never seen before, to be in that really raw moment with those emotions going on. But at the same time, when you come back from a mission like that and everybody's okay, and you feel like you did a good thing, you made a positive impact, the satisfaction's incredible. I mean, I can't even equate it to anything. So, you know, it was a good rotation. I felt like I had went out and done some things that I really had set forth to do in my career. I had gotten out, and I had decided that I didn't want to leave combat control completely, so I joined a guard unit, but my focus was going to be on finishing school. So I joined a unit in Portland, Oregon, and I was going to school, everything was going great. And I did a little bit of contracting on the side, which is working for the government. I was flying in a intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance aircraft, and I would go overseas. And my guard unit ended up actually getting called up. So I didn't actually volunteer for that deployment. We got called up. And the reason that happened is the career field's really small. There's 400 people total. And so what had happened is they were burning guys out, and so they had to pull from the guard unit. To be honest, I was in a different place in my life. I was focused on school and doing some other things, so it caught me by surprise. You know, at first I don't think I was super motivated to do it. I felt like it was kind of disrupting my flow as far as getting school done. But, you know, at the end of the day, I'm an adult, I'm responsible, I signed on the dotted line, and I've got to fulfill my obligations. So we did 6 months of training. Midway through that training, we found out where we were going. And like I was telling you, we were supplementing an active duty unit. And so the active duty unit guys all took what they thought were the really good spots. And at this time in the war in Afghanistan, this is 2012, there was 2 different missions going on for special operations. You were either doing direct action, and you were flying in helicopters and going and hitting a target for 48 hours and flying back. You had really good living conditions, you had hot chow and running water, and then on the other side of the coin, there was what they call VSP mission, which is Village Stability Platform. And the idea was for Special Operations troops to embed in these areas in remote Afghanistan, to live with them the way that they live, and train them to fight the Taliban. This theory works in some areas where they want to actually, have some semblance of government, infrastructure, but for the most part, everything is very tribal in Afghanistan, and the location that I was headed to was not pro-American, and they weren't very thrilled about that mission. So I knew going into it, I was reading, they have what they call SITREPs, which is situational reports, and you read these before you leave, and it tells you about kind of what the environment is like and what you can expect, and what the guy that you're going to be replacing is currently doing on a day-to-day basis. And every SITREP that I read, this guy was going out and mixing it up, and not just mixing it up, but like, we're talking like 6 to 8 hour firefights, and they only had to leave their compound for 400 or 500 meters before they get into a firefight. So I knew before I stepped onto the bird that this was going to be a much, much different deployment than I had ever experienced. Not only was there going to be a really heavy ops tempo, but we were going to have to kind of suck it up in terms of, kind of living like savages a little bit as far as not having running water, food issues, things of that nature. So one of the things I'll share with you right before I took off is my mom had actually come to visit me in Portland, and I remember trying to really be like positive and strong about it, but I also kind of told her, like I said, hey, like, I think this is going to be kind of a bad one, this is kind of what I've been reading, I'm going to do everything in my power to come back. But I remember when I left her at the airport, she looked at me and I looked at her, and it was just a really distressing situation, because I think that we both had kind of had that thought that this could be the last time that we both see each other. And I honestly kind of made peace with that at that time, as most of my guys did that left on that deployment. So, like I was telling you, that unit that we were augmenting, they took all what they thought were the good locations. So they said, hey, give the guard guys all of eastern Afghanistan, they can take all that VSP mission. So I went out and I was in Wardak province, which is in the Chalk Valley there, just south of Kabul, probably about 35, 40 miles. And my very first day, we went out just to kind of see the area, and we got into 3 firefights. And it was interesting because the team that was there before the team that I was with, they did things a lot differently. They stayed on the high ground, and there was a really large thickets, very green, and so the Taliban could hide in a lot of areas and shoot you from those areas, and you wouldn't know where they were. And so this team that I was with had just gotten in the country right before I did, and they said, hey, we're going to do things differently. We're not going to stay on the high ground, we're going to fight these guys where they are, and we're going to start walking through the orchards. So we did that. My first day in country, I got in at, I want to say, 1:30 local time in the morning. I stayed up and I messed around with my kit. I got everything ready to go, and then we went out that day. And we pushed out, we got into a firefight about 600 or 700 meters into the movement, pushed through it, went to a village, talked to people that didn't really want to talk to us, and left there, got another fight on the way back, pushed through that, and then went back to our VSP location, which essentially is just a big Afghan compound with some sandbags, some fortified positions. So not like a really big sturdy base that you would think of. And honestly, it continued on like that for about 2 weeks. The ops tempo was absolutely crazy. When we weren't out engaging the enemy, we were holding guard, that way we wouldn't get overrun. So you'd have to sit out in the tower for 4 hours at a time to make sure that no one was coming around in your area. But at the same time, as hard as it was at that time, there was a lot of job satisfaction in what we were doing. We were getting a lot of reports from the enemy that they didn't understand what we were doing, they were scared, and we kept pushing into their area and we kept pushing the enemy back. And so it felt really good to know that we were making that significant of an impact that quickly. Unfortunately, like anything else, people adapt, and the Taliban adapted to what we were doing. On October 6th, we went out just like any other day, entered the green zone just like any other day, made initial contact with 2 gentlemen on a motorcycle that were going to try and set up an assault position on us with an RPG, and we had actually put those 2 guys down. We started checking their body for intelligence, and we found out that there was more bad guys in the next village, so we were going to go down to the next village and find out what was going on there. So we started heading south, and we ended up in a very funneled, very channelized area. For anybody that's served in the military, when you're in the low ground, the last thing that you want to do in enemy territory is end up in a very channeled, funnelized choke point, because that's a really good place for you to get assaulted. And essentially that's what had happened. I was 5th in the movement, so there was 4 gentlemen ahead of me, and as I was stepping down this little terrace, we had walked into a PKM position, which is an automatic machine gun that the Taliban use, and they were 10 meters away. And that's basically the distance from me to that back table where the food are. And the crazy thing is, it's so thick in that area that you didn't see them until you walked up on them. So we walked into that position, they unloaded on us. Immediately we took 4 casualties. People were yelling for a medic. My job at that time is to try and basically shoot off a couple of magazines of ammo in the enemy's direction, and then start talking to aircraft and start trying to get bombs on target. Unfortunately, that day we not only didn't have the right aircraft, but it was so close there was really nothing that we could do. I didn't feel confident that I could talk the aircraft on 10 meters away in green zone and not hit my own guys. So that was extremely frustrating for me. I have, at this point, 8 or 9 years in a very highly specialized job, and in the worst moment where they actually need me, I'm not able to do anything. I felt very helpless. So we had 4 casualties ahead of us, couldn't move, we were pinned down, and our warrant officer, Joe Shiro, had bounded up to my position. I was laying in the prone. I had looked over to Joe. He had said something to me, and I had turned back down. I was looking at my map. And then the thing I remember is one of the Afghan partners that we were working with was yelling at me, and I looked, and I see Joe just completely slumped over. But I didn't know it was Joe. Like, it was very odd. I looked over, and I saw multicams, I saw a helmet, I saw an American flag, but it wasn't, it didn't seem like it was an American to me. I mean, I had seen dead Afghans before, a lot of dead Taliban. I've never seen one of my own guys hurt like that. And so there was a lot of really odd mental processing going on at that time, trying to wrap my head around that. And then for anybody that's been in that kind of a situation, a fight or flight situation, things really slow down and it feels like you're there for hours. And so yeah, I rolled over to Joe's position, we got all of his stuff off. Unfortunately, Joe was pretty much dead at that point. He barely had a pulse. We drug him back up to the casualty collection point, and we had gotten the other guys back up there. And we tried working on them. My job at that point was to put fires on the area that we took fire from. We were a little bit further away, so I could start doing that now. And then simultaneously talk to helicopters that were going to go ahead and evac our guys out. Another significant moment for me that day was when you have casualties on the battlefield, you segment them into certain areas in terms of priority. Certain guys are, considered walking wounded, and then on the other side of the spectrum you have what they call expected, which is a guy that's, either going to die or he's dead. Joe, unfortunately, was dead at that point, but there was another guy that we were working on. His name was Justin. And when we got him back to the casualty collection point, Justin looked great. I mean, he didn't look great, but, you know, considering what had happened to him, he seemed like he was going to perhaps make it. But unfortunately, where he was shot, he just had a rapid decline. And I remember a moment where I was trying to patch up his back because he had a through and through. And the team sergeant came up and I said, hey, I need to know, you know, what the priorities are here. I need to be able to tell the aircraft, because if we only have one helicopter coming and they don't have room, we need to know which guys are the priority to go. And he's like, you know, I hate to do it, but he's like, he points to Justin and he said he's expected. And it was just a different experience for me, because I think with Joe, when I looked at him, he was, you know, I think he was gone already when I saw him. But Justin, like, I kind of had held hope that he was going to make it through and be okay. And I was working near Justin, I was working on Justin, and so there was an emotional connection there with Justin while that was taking place. That's kind of hard to explain, but it's something that will always sit with me for the rest of my life, because I was pretty much the last person that Justin would ever really interact with. So I talked the helicopters on to where we were. I picked up Justin, I carried him down to the evac point. You know, I put him on the bird. We put the rest of the guys on the bird. Thankfully, they were able to get all 5 of those guys out at once. And we took over a compound for a couple hours, and then we went back to our compound. And we didn't have any more fire the rest of that day. That day is pretty tough for me. Like I said, I've been shot at, I've been in some pretty hairy situations before, but it's a different animal to see one of your teammates, one of your brothers go through that. It's really, really hard to explain. One quote that I'd heard the other day from Sebastian Junger, he's a renowned filmmaker. He did this film Restrepo about the Korengal Valley. He had said that war is messy, it's improvisational, and it doesn't cater to a narrative arc. And I can't think of a better way to describe war, because, you know, it's like a boxer. You can have a plan until you get hit in the mouth, and then what are you going to do? So it was definitely a very different vibe in terms of how I was feeling, how the team was feeling. You know, the 2 weeks before that, we were going out and doing our job and doing a fantastic job at that. And then all of a sudden we went out and, you know, the enemy got one off on us. They beat us that day. And so that was a tough feeling. You didn't feel as invincible anymore. The remainder of the rotation was fairly eventful still. We went out, we'd get in firefights, come back, do it all over again. Our area was actually so bad in Afghanistan that the aviation assets in Afghanistan refused to fly to us for about 3 weeks at one time, even at night. So we ended up going really low on food, going really low on water, and it was really frustrating, because it's like, you know, the guys that are out here actually doing the job, doing the mission, and, you know, some guy in a helicopter can't come out here for 20, 30 minutes and take a little bit of risk to make sure we get some food. It was tough. So, you know, being in that kind of an operations tempo where you're going out there and you're getting after it, you're putting it on the line every day, and then to know that there are people who don't want to do the same thing for you, it was tough. So guys are trying to wrap their head around that. And I will say, on a lighter note, we smelled absolutely horrible. After 6 months of not bathing, guys in their 20s and 30s, I mean, it's enough to make a billy goat puke. It was disgusting. And it was really funny, because it goes to show the kind of support that I have from all of my family members back here. I remember saying, I think within the first couple of weeks, I said, hey, we're low on food, and I don't have water, so food and baby wipes, please. Whatever you can do, food and baby wipes. So I got food and baby wipes. I have a pretty cool picture. It's, I'm standing next to about 12 boxes, and they all had baby wipes and pistachios and beef jerky. So I think I ended up having a collection of about 2,500 baby wipes at one time. So I was all covered down on that. Fast forward to the end of that rotation, I was definitely pretty much ready to go home. On the other side, I felt really bad. My team was going to be there for about another month. I felt bad about leaving them. So it's hard to go through that. You feel like you're leaving your guys. But I went home, flew into that base I was telling you guys about, Bagram, which is a big base in Afghanistan. And one of the things that we try and do before we leave country is we take a week at that big base and we do physical evaluation as well as psychological evaluation. I had some physical bang-ups. I had sprained my MCL. I had a really bad neck. But I had been talking to the psych doc the second day I was back there, and they could tell right away that something wasn't right with me. So I went back to the hoosh that night, went to sleep, got up the next morning, someone came over and said, hey, we want you to talk to the psych doc again, the commander's there. So we talked and they said, hey, like, you're not in a good spot, and we can tell, we kind of have an idea of what happened this deployment, but we think that you need to come back, and I think you need to talk to somebody right away when we land in Florida. At the time, I was living in Portland, Oregon, and I didn't want to stay in Florida. I knew I wasn't in a good spot, but the last thing that I wanted to do was stick around and talk to some lieutenant colonel about touchy-feely stuff. I wanted to go home and see family, I wanted to see friends, and I wanted to drink a beer. So I said, hey, I'll make a deal with you. Just let me go home and see family, let me see my friends, and I will go talk to a doctor. So I got home and they got me set up with a psychologist in the Air Force who got me into a cognitive therapy program. And cognitive therapy is all focused around one event, and it's desensitization of whatever that event is. So it's kind of like watching a really scary movie over and over, and it ceases to be scary, and that's the idea of cognitive therapy. It's one of the hardest things I've ever been through, to tell you guys the truth. All the training, all the running, and putting the heavy packs on and all that stuff, that was hard, but it's incredibly hard to dig that stuff back up and to think about all of that stuff all over again. The first week that I was there, I had to write out a summary, word for word, of a description that basically took place that day. Sensory-wise, what I was feeling, everything. And it was incredibly, incredibly difficult to every week relive that. On the other side of that, I feel like I got a little bit better. I had a little bit different perspective. And it's interesting because when you come back from a deployment, there's kind of two phases. That first couple of weeks, a lot of it's physiological. You're really trying to adjust to your surroundings. Loud noises tend to set you off a little bit. Sleeping's really tough. But then after that, when you go through traumatic experiences, like seeing your friends killed, it's living with that thought every minute of every day, and the nightmares and all of that stuff. So that carries on. You have the 2-week physiological period, but then you have everything else after that you have to deal with, and the guilt and everything that comes with it. So the cognitive therapy, it was beneficial, but I don't think it was the end of my journey by any stretch, and I still don't think I'm ever going to be out of the woods, to tell you the truth. People talk about certain dates. October 6th obviously stands out for me. I wear a bracelet in commemoration of those guys that say it's October 6th on it. October 6th isn't a good day for me, but to be honest, every day is October 6th for me. Just some days are more October 6th than others, if that makes sense. So I finished cognitive therapy. I knew I wanted to finish school, and the reason why is because the guys that were there, they had life plans. They had stuff that they wanted to do. Joe had kids and he wanted to take them places and do things with them and be a father. And Justin had plans and he had a girlfriend and he wanted to get married. But they didn't have that option anymore to pursue those plans that they had. And the only thing that I can think of is it would be incredibly selfish of me to give up on my dreams and my goals and my plans. And I decided that I was going to stop putting off college and I was going to get it done. So I started doing some research. I determined I wanted to come back to California to be closer to family. And I applied and actually ended up getting into UC Berkeley as an undergraduate junior, where I'm currently a student. And so I moved down from Portland, Oregon to Berkeley last year, or sorry, we're in 2014. I moved down in August, and it was an adjustment. A different adjustment than just coming back from a deployment, in the sense that I had family a few hours away, but I was by myself in Berkeley, and you know the saying about idle hands and idle time, and I think that was a big issue with me at that time. You know, I'm 32 now. I was 30 at the time when I started going to school again in Berkeley. And, you know, it's really hard for anybody to relate to you to begin with, let alone 18, 19, 20-year-olds. So I just felt very alone, very isolated, and kind of saturated with my own problems. At that time, I was taking an SSRI, I was taking Prozac. And unfortunately, I ended up hitting what they call the Prozac poop out, which is you basically keep upping the dosage if you stop feeling whatever you're supposed to be feeling. And I got up to, I want to say, about 110, 120 milligrams a day. And I just started becoming really robotic. I didn't like the way, you know, my body was going. I was gaining weight. I was really unmotivated to do anything. So against the better judgment of everybody, including the medical field, I just completely stopped taking it. And you're supposed to wean off of that, but I was done with it. I was just done. I didn't want to feel like that anymore. And I got to learn a very hard lesson by doing that. I was very irritable, I was very depressed. There'd be times that I would lock myself in my apartment for days at a time and I wouldn't come out. I didn't want to interact with people. It was a really tough time in my life. I had just passed the second anniversary of October 6th. I was all alone and I didn't really know what to do. I was in the middle of filing a VA claim, which is no easy task in and of itself. And I had talked to a couple of folks that were on campus there. Berkeley has a really good resource center in terms of psychologists and doctors and folks that you can actually talk to. And I had talked to somebody on campus there and then somebody else later on in the week. And it was really odd, but both of them had said, you know, you have a very unique situation, nothing that we've ever really seen from any other students here. We don't really know too much about the kinds of therapy that you might need, but they both had separately made a recommendation to look into canine programs for veterans with PTSD. And that was tough for me because I didn't really understand what that meant. I thought service dogs were for folks that were seeing eye impaired or maybe even had lost a limb and needed help physically. I didn't understand the idea of a dog that could help me psychologically. You know, I had grown up with dogs, I love animals, and I guess I kind of understood the relationship you could have with an animal, but I didn't understand to what point. So it was odd to me. I was in a really low time, and to be honest with you, it's one of the few times in my life I've actually contemplated taking my own life. It was tough, and you know, I always say that that's a quitting mentality and it's a coward's way out. But to be honest with you guys, like there was times where I would wake up and I felt so horrible, I just didn't want to feel whatever I was feeling anymore. And so there was 2 separate times where I really honestly contemplated, you know, making the big move. Fortunately enough, those 2 folks got to me that week, and they both had made those recommendations. I sat on it for about a day, I thought about it. Then I went on Google and I basically typed in a bunch of really random words. I said service dog, veteran, and then at the end I thought, let's put Labrador in there, because if I get a dog, I want a Labrador. I grew up with Labs, I love Labs, they're the best. Let's see what comes up. The very first thing that came up was this place called Hunter's Point Kennel out of Iowa. And I looked at the website, I saw something about dogs for post-traumatic stress and other things. The dogs were beautiful, and I thought, okay, like, let's get some more information. At least I'll do my due diligence, I'll make a phone call, and I can at least say that I did that. I called, and Justin, the guy that's the breeder out in Iowa that teams with Labs for Liberty, got on the phone and said, well, I'm just a breeder. We work in conjunction with Labs for Liberty. We pick out the dogs for them, and then at 8 weeks they take them, and then they're theirs. So we said, you know, I will relay the information to Joan, the co-founder of Labs for Liberty, and I'll have her call you back. To be honest with you, like, I was in the middle of doing a VA claim, and call you back means like you're never going to hear back from anybody. So I honestly was just like, okay, that's that. Like, no one's ever going to call me back, and I'm just going to continue on with my life. And Joan called me back within under an hour. Very, very supportive. Wanted to know more about myself, a little bit about my experiences without being too intrusive and without probing too much. So we had a pretty good conversation on the phone, and I sent her some of my stuff over email to verify I was who I said I was. We had talked a few more times, and she said, I think you're a good candidate for a dog. And so I think I was in that half-in, half-out stage. I talked to my mom at the time. I said, Mom, I'm looking into doing this program. It's called Labs for Liberty. This is kind of what they do. And my mom was kind of hesitant. She said, you know, if you're having issues, like, maybe like responsibility of taking on a dog isn't the best thing right now for you. So just being a mom, you know, being protective, as they do. So Joan called me back the next week and then sent me emails, and they sent pictures of the new litter of puppies. And I was done. I was on the hook at that point. And I think there was the one, actually it wasn't even Willis, it was a different puppy. They had like picked it up, and it was like this little fat black lab, and he's just like, I mean, if there was ever a selling point, that is it right there. So I saw that picture and I made the decision. I said, you know what, like, enough's enough. I miss being who I used to be. I miss feeling happy. I miss enjoying things that I used to enjoy. And I want to make a change. And so we went forward with the process. Joan is very persistent on the phone. She keeps after you. And a lot of us veterans with either TBI or post-traumatic stress have issues with memory, and Joan is very good about making sure you remember she called. So Joan weekly was sending me updates about Willis, pictures and videos with him with his foster parents, stuff with his training, setting up travel and stuff to go out there to Utah. And I'll be honest with you, not even having the dog, my quality of life was just through the roof. And I think that even before I got Willis, I think that my mom was kind of sold on it, because I think that she could see the difference that it had already made in my life. And I think the one time that really told me that I was really doing the right thing was actually 2 days before I was scheduled to go out to Utah to go get Willis, to adopt him and do the week-long training and take him with me. I was actually supposed to go to my uncle's wedding. I told him I was going to go. I had rented a car. I'd done the whole thing, and it was actually the exact same day that my friend Will Jefferson had died, March 21st, and I just couldn't get myself out of the house. That was the day before that I flew out for Utah. And I thought, man, if there was any other indicator that I need to change my life, this is it. Like, thankfully I got on the plane, made it out there, and they actually had Willis at the airport waiting for me down at baggage.
You can see the video on our Facebook page.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. The connection was instant with him and I. Spent that week doing some training, and if any of you guys watches Caesar Milan, it's not really training the dog, it's training the person. So that's what that week was about, getting me to understand what Willis needs from me in terms of a teammate. Took him home and never looked back. This guy goes to class with me, he goes to the gym with me, he goes to the grocery store with me. In fact, I was doing so well, I ended up getting an internship with a company in San Francisco. I took him with me last summer every day into a professional environment where there was thousands of professional employees in suits and the whole thing. And I don't know, I could just tell that my life was heading in a different direction. My interaction with people was different. People come up to him anyways. I mean, I've ceased being mad. I'm now Willis's owner, which is okay. Like, I'm okay with not having the spotlight on me at all times. So, yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, it's been absolutely life-changing for me. And like what I was telling you guys earlier about peaks and valleys, in the physical sense, I walked up peaks, and we cleared through valleys. Psychologically, I've been through peaks, and I've been through valleys. And the great thing about my relationship with this guy is that I no longer have to climb peaks alone, and I no longer have to clear valleys by myself. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to the co-founders of Labs for Liberty, Joan and Roger Nold.
Obviously, Matt went over and paid it forward for us, and Willis is now taking care of him. So I don't know, and I think Matt maybe didn't really pick up on this, as he talked more, and he talked about kind of the worst parts of his life in the military and that deployment to Afghanistan. Did you notice how Willis kind of rose up? He had been laying there sleeping, he rose up in this sitting position. He started to look around a little bit more. He became more vigilant, making sure that you folks didn't get too close to him. And he started to whimper, and he started to pull. And to me, what he was telling Matt is, let's go. You're not comfortable. We should leave now. We need to go home. I need to take care of you. And Matt was correcting him because, they were doing something. But Willis ramped up because he knew Matt ramped up, and Willis was trying to take him from the situation that was causing him distress. And that's the amazing thing about these dogs. I can't train him to do that. He just does. He senses Matt. And that was what was really neat. When they met in the airport, you have got to watch that video. It was so funny. Because Willis just threw himself on his back and wanted his belly rubbed, and he loved him instantly. Yep, and we've placed almost 25 dogs, and they all seem to bond very quickly with their veterans, but nobody has done that. Willis and Matt were just like this instantly. They were just meant to be. It was like they knew each other before they ever got together. So it was really special. We kind of got into this because I didn't know what else to do with my life when I hit the late 40s and my boys were off to college. I'm a doctor, and apparently I wasn't getting enough stimulation there. And I don't golf, and I don't want to. And so our son joined the Army Reserves, Psychological Operations. I started reading the books that were written by people who had come back from Iraq and Afghanistan, started to recognize the issues that they were having that maybe are or are not any worse than previous wars, but are at least being talked about. And so I thought, well, what can we do to help? And I was like, we're animal people. I know how to train horses. I can train dogs. And so it took me 9 months to find a 1-week class to teach me how to train dogs to do tasks for veterans, and quite frankly, it's very easy. It's stupid easy, but anyway, the big thing is actually the public access. Getting those puppies out from the time they're 8 to 10 weeks old, taking them to the store, taking them to Target, not minding cleaning up a mess here and there, going to the restaurant, taking them everywhere you go as if they were your toddler. That's the hardest part, because they have to be bulletproof. They have to be ready to walk down the street, and when the gravel truck goes by, they're fine. They have to be ready for anything that you throw at them, and the only way to achieve that is by taking them everywhere with you. And that's probably the biggest part of what we do. And we're very fortunate in that we have family members and friends who are supportive of what we do, so they foster for us. And then our son has friends at the University of Utah, and actually Willis spent some time down at the University of Utah, a fair amount, going to class. We try to customize all our dogs. We knew Matt was in class, Willis needed to know how to go to class. So Jake's friends took Willis to class. He sat through classes day in, day out. He went on the train system in Salt Lake City so that he was ready for Matt. We thought we had him ready for Matt. The moped set him off at first. Go figure. The Harley was fine, but not the moped. So with Matt, he was our 4th veteran, and really we didn't see it going 4 to 6 dogs a year, but the need is ridiculous. I mean, we have so many folks coming back with traumatic brain injuries, with PTSD, with physical disabilities from these wars that have dragged on forever. And frankly, the VA does nothing for them, so it's our job. They paid it forward. It's our turn to pay it back. And so what we decided is we're going to take Labrador Retrievers, primarily from Hunters Point Kennel. Justin's an awesome guy. And we're going to select just the right pups, and we identify our veteran first, and then we pick the right pup for that veteran. And in fact, he was supposed to get a chocolate lab. And before we ever got the pup, Justin was washing his litter and said, no, that was the right one, and that was Willis. So we're very selective. And then I already have the information from people like Matt, and I already have the knowledge of what their needs are, and I've already talked to them and nagged them endlessly. And so when we get that pup, we start molding that pup to what their needs are. So if they're in the city, they go to the city. If they are a welder, or we have a welding instructor now, that pup's going to the shop. That dog is trained for what his needs are, or her needs are. I don't train a dog to turn on a light switch if they can do it themselves. It's a waste of time. Our goal is to get these puppies, dogs, into our veterans' hands as quickly as possible and maintain the highest quality, because 22 veterans are killing themselves every single day. That's 8,030 veterans a year. And we look at it this way, we start with the puppies, so we don't have to correct any problems they've had in their past, so it makes it more efficient. We custom train them specifically for their needs. And Willis was the youngest puppy we placed at 6 months. We place them typically now more between 8 and 12 months. They're trained at 6 months, but they kind of get that adolescent stage around 7 or 8 where it's bark, and they don't need to deal with that. So, you know, that's why we use the labs, and that's why we start them as puppies. We also have a lot of friends and family members who are hunters, outdoorsmen, go to the ocean all the time, and we wanted a dog that could be their best friend. You know, to us, a service dog can be your best friend, can be your hunting companion, can be your ball playing companion, and your service dog. They can do dual roles, and that's not something anyone else has done before. And we've proven it. Matt's proven it. Anthony's proven it. He's got our first dog, and she hunts like no other. And so our goal was to provide not only a service dog, but their very best friend in the world, because they should be. We're at the SPCA, and my husband and I have adopted over the years a number of dogs and cats. And we looked at that model, and there are people using, you know, shelter dogs, and it's a wonderful thing, but for our purposes, because of what our knowledge base was, and what our goal was, and the time to put into the dog, we decided we needed to stick with what we know. There's rescuing dogs and placing them with veterans, and that's awesome too. So our path is custom train the dog to the veteran, get them out there, save the lives, and frankly, change the lives of the family. I know Nancy will tell you their lives are different now that Matt's life is better. We have spouses that will say, oh my gosh, my husband, my wife, they'll go to the park now with the kids. Or well, I had a 6-year-old girl say, now my dad can come to my choir practice or my concert. because he's not afraid. He's got his battle buddy. He's got a perimeter. He's got a dog watching his back. He wouldn't go before. She's 6. She recognized that. These dogs save families. They save entire families. And regarding brain injuries, PTSD, and memory, I knew Nancy was a little about the dog and worried that Matt had enough on his plate. And we do actually screen for that because some people aren't ready. So I sent a book home with Matt, or no, I mailed it to you. And it was, it was Until Tuesday, and I would highly recommend that book, Until Tuesday. And it was written by an Army captain who had a golden retriever that he received, and it saved his life. And I said, share that with your mom, she'll understand. We came out in June to visit Matt, and I asked Nancy, how'd you like the book? What book? He got the dog in March. And so he digs through a pile on his table in his kitchen, and there it is, right at the bottom. Have you ever had a chance to read that book?
Yes, it's fabulous.
There you go. But it was well after it was intended. She was already sold to the dog. So yeah, you gotta nag these guys. But that's the point. They paid it forward. We all owe it to them to pay it back. You know, we're free here today because of what Matt did, what Joey did, what you gentlemen in the back from the VFW have done, and we owe you that debt of gratitude. And so we're just really honored that we've extended our family with Matt and all the other veterans, because to us it's a family, it's a culture. We don't give them a dog, send them home, say, bye, have a nice life. No, you call me when you need to. You text me at 2:30 in the morning. I've had that happen. One guy texted me at 3:30 in the morning, I can't find my keys. I'm like, well, train your dog to find your keys. These are things that are very upsetting. It's a family, and we are the fortunate ones because we get this huge family that we're building, and we're very, very excited about it. If you have any questions for Matt or myself or my microphone shy husband? Yeah.
Will you let them demonstrate?
Oh yeah, Matt, there's so many tasks.
So we'll do one of them. There's a couple of indicators, and what's really unique about Labs for Liberty is they customize the training of the animals to the veterans specifically. And so I would say midway through the training for Willis, she asked me, so what are some of the things that you do when you get ramped up and you get stressed? So I kind of gave her some like physical stuff that I do. And one of the things that I do is I rub my face, and Willis is trained to respond to that. When he's not looking at Joan. So if we're in class and Willis sees me kind of getting ramped up and I go to like rub my face, like sometimes he falls asleep in class because he's tired, but a lot of times he is looking up at me, and if I just do this, he comes up and starts giving me kisses. So that's just one of the things that I do. Another thing that I used to do is I used to actually kind of grab my collar and choke myself. And what's really cool is that since I've had Willis, I haven't done that once. I want to say the second night I was out at the ranch in Labs for Liberty, I was having a bad nightmare, and Willis had woken me up. The second night I was there,
Yeah.
so.
Connection was just there.
Yeah, so those are some of the things that he's trained to do. But to be honest with you, I mean, the tasks are wonderful, they're fantastic. It's nice to be broken out of whatever is going on in your head at that time. But I think the thing that's priceless is the relationship that him and I have and the bond that we have. I think that supersedes anything that he knows. So yeah.
Matt, do you get anxiety attacks?
I wouldn't call them attacks. I think that initially when I first came back that I did. Again, loud noises, really crowded rooms were tough. And I would start to, my blood pressure would go up and I would have trouble breathing.
Could he sense that?
But he definitely keys in on stuff like that.
So what
yeah.
does he do when you...
Well, like what she's saying, he's trying to pull me out of the room. Like he wants me out of the room. Like he knows like I'm uncomfortable and, you know, nervous talking about certain things, and so he can sense that. So yeah.
But if you cannot leave the room like this, what's his...
Like what he's doing right now, he's standing in front of me. And it's like, I don't even notice it half the time, but like he blocks, like he barricades me. And so he's, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, stinky.
And the other thing they do is sometimes, you know, Matt or whoever, they'll reach down and they'll start stroking that dog. And that helps them settle down, and the dog's like, okay, it's good, it's good.
think Matt's forgetting the first night he was in there. And the thing about Willis rolling over, Willis was not that kind of dog for anybody. To put the emphasis on this, he was like, "Oh, I'm cute, I'm Willis, you can take my picture." And to throw himself like he did, and like I said, you got to watch the video. But the goofy thing, I really knew there was a connection. I think it was the first night you were there and you were working on the computer. You remember that? We were just up there talking at the guest house, and it's a crazy thing because it's like, from here to you, and the dog's laying over here, and we weren't really talking about Matt's experience, just military in general. I watched the dog get up, and he was his age at the time, go over and sit beside Matt. Matt reaches down and pets the dog, and the dog just sinks. And I stopped him and I watched this. I said, "Did you see what happened?" Matt goes, "No." I says, "Look what Willis says." He looks down. I mean, it was that quick.
If he ever sensed that you were in danger, would he attack?
I don't know. I mean, I asked Joan this before. He is such a sweet dog. I think he would just lick him until they ran
I think he would do what he's doing now, and he would try to put distance.
Yeah.
But I honestly think with any of our labs, if it was really, truly an acute danger situation, not just Matt maybe getting mad at somebody, but a true physical threat, I think he would intervene. I could be wrong, but I just believe that. He's not trained to, but I just believe that.
May I ask you what you're planning on doing when you get out of school?
Yeah, so I'm a senior right now, and I graduate in a couple months, and I actually have a job lined up. So in July, I'll go back to being an adult again. So.
In what field?
Consulting.
How many dogs do you train?
We've placed close to 25. I have to look at my spreadsheet every now and then.
Since July 14.
Since, July of 2014. And actually, Willis was our fourth dog, and Matt came out to us March 22nd last year. And right now we have 23 in foster care and training. And like I said, I had intended to do 4 to 6. This was my, okay, the kids are gone, I'm going to help the world, and the need's too great. So we're just working on building it and quality, and the family culture is the most important part of it.
Nope. He's talking to you.
Are there any future plans to train other trainers so more of these programs can be taking place all around the United States?
What we've done is, last summer in June, we actually did a training in Missouri with a gentleman that had been a combat engineer. He's a master dog trainer now. And he helped train 15 people, 12 of whom were veterans, and they help us in one way or another. I've got 3 or 4 people now that are actually physically helping me finish the dogs, not just foster the dogs. And we keep adding to those now one at a time as people show that they have the time for that commitment. We have fosters everywhere from New York State to Utah right now. And we just have to shuffle the dogs around. We have trainers in Nebraska, Colorado, Missouri, and Utah. And so all of the veterans ultimately come to Utah to our guest house, and that's where they train with their dogs. And whether that'll change, I don't know, because then we actually get to interact directly with each and every one of them personally, and that's really important to Roger and I. We're in the process of getting a full-time trainer, a volunteer, who is the significant other of a 17-year Marine who got a pup from us. But even then, even though she will help and she'll be full-time, and that way I might have a few hours to myself, we need to meet every single person because that's how important it is to us. So we serve the whole country, but we do it through Utah.
Matt, were you required to complete high school before you enlisted?
Yeah, it was.
You gotta work quick.
What's that?
You gotta work quick.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, who pays for all of this training, and or that is your foundation or something?
Yep, so essentially we started a foundation 15 months ago, a nonprofit. And for the most part, the first year, Roger and I paid for it because that's what our passion was. We absolutely refused to let the veterans pay for anything because they prepaid. So they get these animals free of charge, and they get flown out there free of charge. And so we do take donations, and we are working on, building sponsorships and donations. And we do have some people that will sponsor specific puppies. They'll give us, we estimate it's about $3,000 to do a puppy and finish a puppy and bring the veteran out. And the reason it doesn't cost the $25,000 you hear people talk about is because no one's paid. We're a 100% volunteer organization, period, that's it. You do this because you're passionate, not because you want to draw a paycheck. And so with that, we do have some people that will donate $3,000 and then we'll say, okay, so this puppy and this veteran are going to be who you've sponsored, and we share information, and we share pictures and that kind of stuff with them. So it is all donations and
The
non-profit.
big thing is what we do radically different is we leverage time. If you notice, we get these pups in their hands, at 7 months to a year. That's typically a year to a year and a half quicker than a traditional program.
So it also costs less
So,
that way as well.
I can understand the inflated price when you're paying a Petco trainer a living wage, but we're 100% volunteers. So to put that in dollars and cents for you, we did last year's budget, we operated on less than $50,000.
Thank you for all you do.
Thanks for having us tonight, guys. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.